Welcome to this week's edition of The Scots in Us. As we look to begin to celebrate the 250th anniversary of the forming of the United States this year, we look back to the Scottish and Dutch families who contributed so much to the founding and development of America from its earliest days 400 years ago. In this episode of The Scots in Us, we share the role that one of the prominent early families, the Palmer Beekman-Livingstons, played. This leading family was spotlighted as we presented our 2025 Wallace Award to Wright Post Palmer for his outstanding role in continuing their family's outstanding philanthropic and cultural work.
1604, a Bible. Reverend Gerardus Beekman, a scholar and prominent figure in the Protestant movement, was one of the distinguished scholars who translated the King James Bible for King James I. The king was so impressed with his work that he remodeled the Beekman family coat of arms to a rose on either side of a running brook. 1647, New Amsterdam. When Peter Stuyvesant's ship first arrived in the New World, the 21-year-old grandson of Gerardus Beekman arrived in New Amsterdam to work as a clerk. Wilhelmus, later anglicized to William, was an ambitious man who used the money he brought with him to purchase an extensive property on Pearl Street along the East River, extending to present-day Beekman and William Streets and the Beekman Swamp to the west. Throughout his life, he expanded his land holdings in Manhattan, upstate New York, and New Jersey. Besides farming, William was a brewer, proprietor of a flour mill, and a shipowner who engaged in trade and privateering in the Caribbean area. 1653. Wall Street. With the outbreak of the First Anglo-Dutch War, Stuyvesant, fearing invasion from the English via New England, ordered a ditch and a wooden stake wall be constructed on the northern boundary of New Amsterdam. William Beekman was one of the commissioners who oversaw the building of the wall. After the conquest of New Netherland by the English, the area eventually became a street called Wall Street. 1664 to 1674, New York. After the First Anglo-Dutch War, Stuyvesant surrendered the city to the English, who promptly renamed it after the brother of King Charles II, the Duke of York. The Second and Third Anglo-Dutch Wars saw the city return to the Dutch and then back to the English. When the new English governor arrived in 1674, William Beekman was one of the committee of 3 to go aboard his ship to welcome him. In the early 1700s, Gilbert Livingston, son of the first Lord of Livingston Manor, married Cornelia Beekman, granddaughter of William Beekman, in Kingston, New York. In the mid-1700s, Cornelia's brother, Henry Beekman, soon married the daughter of Robert Livingston the Younger a decade later. 1760. Alexander Hamilton. The Beekmans and Krugers had a trading outpost in St. Croix where they employed an ambitious orphan boy named Alexander Hamilton, who quickly learned the fast-paced world of trade shipping. The Beekman firm schooled him in valuable insights of global commerce and the maneuvers of imperial powers. This exposure to prosperous, civic-minded New York businessmen helped to shape the brand of federalism Hamilton later espoused. It also provided Alexander with a direct link to his future home in New York. 1763. Mount Pleasant. James Beekman, great-grandson of William, had become one of the wealthiest men in 18th century New York City. To help his family escape from the increasingly crowded city center, he built a second home overlooking Turtle Bay, located around First Avenue and 51st Street. On a whim, Beekman had the mansion's exterior look like a homely Dutch cottage of his forefathers, but the interior boasted every luxury and comfort available. Formal gardens wrapped around the mansion, which had the first greenhouse in America. 1776. The British are coming. James Beekman, due to his political and economic interests, had become an active member of the Committee of 100 and an officer in the New York Regiment, and supported the American cause in the Revolution. Over the years, he had become friendly with George Washington and invited him often to Mount Pleasant. After the disastrous Battle of Long Island, and with New York under the threat of a British invasion, Washington urged James to flee Manhattan with his family. 1776. 2 lives. On September 15th, British General William Howe invaded Manhattan and immediately took up residence at Mount Pleasant, making the Beekman Mansion Army headquarters. September 17th, an arson fire quickly spread across the city due to strong winds, destroying approximately 500 buildings, including Trinity Church. Over 200 suspected sympathizers were arrested, including Nathan Hale. September 21st, Hale was brought to the Beekman House, where he admitted to trying to secretly obtain military information. Without trial, General William Howe ordered the spy be held that night in the greenhouse, and at first, Light be taken and hanged. Denied the right to send letters to his family or to a clergyman and Bible, Hale was allowed last words in which he quoted Cato's now famous line, "I regret that I have but one life to lose for my country." Later, during the occupation, British Major John Andre, head of British intelligence during the Revolution, was a regular guest at the Beekman Mansion. He spent the night in the upstairs bedroom before sneaking off to meet Benedict Arnold, the mission that would cost him his life, and the papers he carried exposing Arnold's treason. 1789. A carriage. In 1771, James Beekman purchased a stunning coach from a British sea captain. At the time, only a couple dozen such carriages existed in New York. In 1789, with the ascent of George Washington to the presidency, lore has it that Beekman lent him the carriage so he could take it from his Cherry Street home to his inauguration at Federal Hall. In the late 1700s, Jacobus Beekman married Maria Sanders, and in the early 1800s, Gerard Beekman married Catherine Sanders. 1804. New York Historical Society. Founded as a repository for books and documents dealing with American history, the New York Historical Society was the city's second library and first museum. New York State Senator James Beekman, and great-grandson of James Beekman, was one of the earliest members of the New York Historical Society and often addressed the society on the history of New York. In 1911, the Beekmans donated their carriage to the New York Historical Society, and today it is one of only 3 18th-century carriages used in colonial North America that is known to survive in original condition. 1853. Central Park. A cultural shift began to happen in New York City in the late 1800s. The city began to question the quality of the environment that was developing. There was a realization and need to reintegrate nature into the fabric of this fast-growing, industrializing town. Senator James Beekman was one of the key figures in the debates surrounding the need, location, and creation of Central Park.